We are gathered here today to bid adieu to the recently departed. Make no mistake about it now. We have come not to praise the Lakers, but to bury them. Bury them deep. Bury them as one LBJ himself so recently said. Bury them not 6 feet, but no 12. Bury them 12 feet deep so that the stench of the rotting corpse of this Lakers season will never seep up through the dirt to afflict the nostrils of the living ever again, because it was a stanky, stanky mess. And so, as the great Dr. Richard Pryor himself once said, the dirt get to the dirt. And so we don't want to waste no more time with them above ground. Let us get to the dirt and get to shoveling 12 feet deep worth of dirt over these decaying, departed, lost, and turned out Lakers. The dirt. What it do, too? Welcome back to another episode of Scotty Says. I'm your host. And, well, that was the eulogy, my friends. That was the Lakers' eulogy for a miserable season that is now finally ceased and deceased. And so, aside from the eulogy, we had to pay last rites to these rotten corpses now. What's left is to get to the autopsy. And that's where we're really going to dig in on this episode. The eulogy and the autopsy. Now, as some of you may know, I was chronicling this Lakers season because it had so much promise, you see. I mean, there was a lot of talk, Vegas, and experts, the experts, and fans and believers in the king. There was a lot of hope that this could somehow be a latter year version of a dream team, and that the Lakers could compete for championship. Yes, they said it at the beginning. Now, there were plenty who said this is a bad-looking outfit. And when I first heard that the Lakers had signed Russell Westbrook, my first reaction was, wow. Not wow with exclamation marks, but just like, wow, like, huh. And I guess if I had to use a synonym for that wow, it would have been almost like, demystifying, puzzling, peculiar to an extent. But, LBJ, the King, you see, has always been known for being able to take four decents, and get him into the finals. Now, maybe he wouldn't win the finals. You know, he's 4-6 in 10 finals. But I've done episodes, go back and check. I've done episodes chronicling the King. One episode called Goatness. And I said in that episode that LeBron James has the almost unique quality of being able to take four decents and lead them to the finals year in and year out like a metronome, I said. Every year. And he did for 9 years in a row. I mean, and then he came to the Lakers. And well, folks, the metronome is no more. LBJ cannot take four decents and with his sheer will and force and ability to lift, lead them to the finals anymore. Matter of fact, now he can do his very best heavy-duty lifting. He can't lead them to the playoffs. And so, we have to face the reality that age, Father Time comes for us all, is undefeated. And the Lakers got LeBron James at that point in time in which he became susceptible. And so, we're going to go back. And we're going to look at the timeline. There's a lot to dissect in this episode, so I hope you got your popcorn ready. Because we are going to talk about Winning Time, the series. We're going to talk about AD and Russ and more about the King. We're going to talk about Frankie V, and we're going to talk about the front office. I mean, we're going to go in. We're going to talk about the Magic Man. And we are going to provide a complete autopsy on this epic fail of a season. And I think it is fair to say this was the most epic failure of a pro sports franchise in terms of a seasonal end result in pro sports history that I know of. This one was bad. And remember now, the gang said, keep that same energy. Because there were people who said, you know, it's an odd fit with Russ and everybody's old. And he said, hey, you talking about my squad. You talking about okay, keep that same energy. Problem was, you couldn't keep that energy. Your squad couldn't keep the energy because, in fact, they were old. And so I was chronicling the Lakers. I called the episodes As the Basketball Turns, Tales from the Crypto. And how appropriate that became. And I got to the end of 2021, late in December. And it became clear to me that this was a grisly mess, a putrid stew of a mix that was going absolutely nowhere. And I said I would be back to continue to cover the Lakers in the Deuce, the new year. But I didn't come back with another episode of Tales from the Crypto until right now, until the Eulogy and the Autopsy. Because I just can't cover losing mess. Just sloppy, nasty, disgusting mess. That's what they've been providing That's what the pro basketball franchise has been providing. The Lakers, at least, the Clips, whew, at least they did make the playoffs. And speaking of the Clips went 4-0 against LeBron and the Lakers. And on the fourth one, when asked about it in the media, LeBron said, well, they're just better than we are. Well, yes, it does appear that is the case, but so we're gonna dig in. We're gonna dig into all of it. But let's start. Let's start with the king. Now, LeBron James played magnificent basketball this season. Now, he was hurt a lot. And see, that's, again, where the story begins with LBJ and the Lakers. Because if you recall, when LBJ joined the Lakers, it was a group of you could say, young kids, no names. These kids were routinely losing 50 games. And LBJ shows up. And LBJ and these perennial losing young no-name kids, and these kids were Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball, and you had Josh Hart there, and Kuzma was there, right? And KCP was there. But I'm saying this going nowhere team, now here's LeBron. And on Christmas Day of his first season in LA, Christmas Day, I'll never forget it now, because I had traveled, went to Las Vegas to see my son. And as LeBron James led that no-name group of decents, of youngsters, into a Christmas Day showdown with the championship pedigree Golden State Warriors. And do you know that the Lakers, not the Warriors, the Lakers were in first place, leading the Western Conference on Christmas Day of his first season in LA. He was doing it again, the metronome. And on that day, Christmas Day, in that game, he seemed to slip on a wet spot, and as it turned out, tore his groin. A significant injury. And so it began, the spiral of injury after injury and the demise of hope and aspiration for the squad. After LeBron was injured, as you know, the team struggled to stay afloat, ended up missing the playoffs. LeBron James tried to come back that season, and he said he was coming back and he was going to activate his playoff mode, because he was used to doing that. He could take a group of decents, for who knew, no names, and activate and take them. But when he came back from that groin injury and he pressed the activate button, he's like, hey, where's the turbo boost? And he pressed it a couple more times. And the team missed the playoffs. And LeBron said to himself, you know what the problem was? It wasn't the fact that I couldn't really recover from the injury and I don't really maybe have the ability to be the metronome anymore. The problem is I need Anthony Davis, you see. We're going to get to AD. And so then it all became about moving heaven and earth to get Anthony Davis. Because the idea was, with Anthony Davis, why LeBron, as the seasons and the miles piled up, would be able to sort of take a passenger seat, and AD could do the heavy lifting. Okay? And so, sure enough, Clutch went to work, and whiz bang bam, and the kids are gone to the Pellies, and AD comes to LA. And in his first year, they win the championship, LeBron and AD. And it's the bubble year, it's the, it's the pandemic, and it's the long break in the season and everything. And so there's that aspect to it, but the fact remains, they won the title now. Problem is the injuries. LeBron, due to increasing in age. AD, he has a tendency toward injury. He's injury prone, you see. I've given him the nickname, the Rubber Band Man Robin, because he was supposed to be a strong Robin who would eventually become the Batman. But instead, he really showed himself to be a perennial Robin, a forever Robin, who was extraordinarily injury prone. And so I called him the Rubber Band Man Robin, because there were times when you could see him sort of bang a knee or tweak an ankle or his arm or a finger or a thumb, pinky, and he'd kind of bend it and look at it and go sit down, but he'd come back. This is pretty much every game now. There's something And so my running joke was that LeBron as Batman would say, "Let's go, Robin, it's Golden State." And Rubber Band Man Robin would say, "I'm with you, Batman, except my index finger is out of socket. Just a moment. Robin, it's the Dallas Mavericks. I need you. I'm right here for you, Batman. But I do have a slight calf strain. If you could hold up for a moment." Rubber Band Man Robin. It's more than just the injury-prone issue with AD. We'll get back to AD. But I give LeBron James credit in his 19th season to ball out the way he did, to average 30 points a game. Now, fair enough, it was in shortened games. I believe he only played 56 games. He didn't play enough games to qualify for the scoring title. But 30 points a game, he had multiple 50-point games. And he's when it comes to his numbers, he's going to give you 8 rebounds, 7 assists, just like you can, put it in pen. And so, in his 19th season, he passes Malone to become the second all-time leading scorer in NBA history. And he's going strong, and if he'd have played a couple or 3 more games, he could have possibly won the scoring title. Remarkable. But his individual feats aren't enough to lift 4 decents, and that's what the Lakers ended up with. At the end of the season now, you would routinely see a starting lineup of LeBron James, along with Stanley Johnson and Austin Reeves. You'd see possibly Dwight Howard or Malik Monk. You'd see Wenyen Gabriel routinely now. So you got Wenyen Gabriel and Stanley Johnson out there with Austin Reeves. There's not a lot of punch. But that never mattered before. LeBron would take them to the finals. Can't do it anymore. just can't do it anymore. So I tip my cap to him for having a magnificent individual season. He is just a spectacular basketball player, a special talent. And next season, in his 20th season, he'll become the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. You know, he'll be the only player to have 30,000 points, 10,000 rebounds, 10,000 assists. I mean, all the numbers, it just goes on and on. It's extraordinary. It's just that what he was able to do, his biggest, maybe his greatest talent as a basketball player was his ability as the maestro to lift 4 decents and take them to the finals. He cannot do it anymore. And the rubber band man, Robin, never could do it. The same guy he was in New Orleans, same guy here. Pretty much. Maybe a little more injury prone now. And how's that gonna age? So, the big three coming into this year was LeBron, AD, and Russ. Now, with AD, I think the foundational problem lies there. Every game I saw when he played another big, he got misused, mistreated. Specifically the games with Karl Anthony Towns. He just beat him down. Karl Anthony Towns was roaring on the court, and AD looked like he was a little guy. He seemed to shrink. He doesn't fare well against the Joker. Giannis eats him alive. He did have a good game against Embiid. I'll give him that. But that's my point, though. He has flashes, but he cannot be relied upon. And honestly, I think the Lakers need to move him. We are into the autopsy, folks. So I think that's where the problem fundamentally lies with the Lakers. Now, I'm not absolving LeBron because he has played GM in many scenarios. And some of the things he has said, the passive-aggressive ways that LeBron behaves, it is disturbing, it's troubling. And I mentioned earlier the thing he said about the Clips being better than them, but there have been several things. How he said he was having so much fun at the end of the season when the Lakers were losing and they had missed the playoffs, just about to, and he said he was having the time of his life. Really? Was that, the best use of a comment there in that scenario with the team looking like pure hot garbage? Then, remember when they played Milwaukee and Giannis destroyed them? And the post-game presser, the reporter asked them, did he think that the Lakers could rise to that level of a team like Milwaukee? And LeBron said no. And then he said, no. He said, is that what you want me to tell you? No. And then later, after all of that and other things, he did come back and say the famous or infamous line that as long as he has life, you have to cut his head off and bury him 12 feet deep and all of that in order to... And that's the resolve that I've been looking for with some of these comments that he's been making all season. And so, yeah, I do think that kind of passive-aggressive media presence sends a weird message to the rest of the team. You're the main guy. You're the leader. You know, the front office stuff with Pelinka and management. We'll get to them, but all of it. And you know, the thing with LeBron is he does this now. This is his MO. He you know, the way he left Cleveland the first time, even though that owner was garbage, the way he left Miami, the you know, things that there is a sort of a pattern that follows LBJ. So of course now here he is with the Lakers, and so, but then there's blame on both sides of that equation. So I give LeBron James the highest credit for the individual season that he put together. It was magnificent. It's just, you have to also give him a good amount of the blame for the other stuff, for the sideshow stuff, and for the GM hat, because by all accounts, it was him who thought that he could make it work with Russ. And of course, it was him who wanted to move heaven and earth, even if he had to clear out all of the kids that they had. He wanted AD. He believed, and they got a chip out of it. But look what you're saddled with now. The people who say run it back with Russ, AD, and LeBron next year and just shuffle the deck with different other players, I think they're insane to expect a different result. We've seen what. Do you think AD's going to be healthy next year? Do you think that Russ is going to fit in better here next year? Yeah, you can bring in another coach, but even that, who? Look at your track record with coaches. You could have had Ty Lue, and you fumbled it. You could have had Monty Williams. You fumbled it. You had Jason Kidd sitting there on the bench. You let him go. All to keep Frankie V and then fire him? The organization is in chaos. And so, yes, we're going to have to talk about that. But just to finish up with AD, you've got to try to put a package together to get the best thing, the best group of players in return for him that you can. You just need younger guys that want to run and play defense and maybe can shoot a little bit. There are lots of them on OKC. They whooped up on the Lakers on multiple occasions this year. You know, even the bottom feeding teams have some really nice pieces. So I'm sure there are teams out there that would, maybe not give up the farm like the Lakers did to get AD, but give up something. Just a moment, Batman. I feel like it might be my heel this time. All right. And then the other thing, and I'm going to leave AD alone, but the reports kept coming out that AD didn't want to play the 5. This big 7-foot dude doesn't want to play the 5. No, I don't like the 5. I don't want to be down. I don't want to be on. You see LeBron playing the 5 repeatedly this season and playing it well. Taking the contact, accepting the responsibility. That's what you want. That's what you need from a leader. You know, the most fire I've seen out of AD all season is when he grabbed Dwight Howard in the beginning of the year. And I knew then, and I said then on one of the previous Tales from the Crypto episodes, that why don't you show that fire with Giannis? Or with, why don't you show that fire with the Joker? Why don't you show that fire with Big Cat? But you're grabbing on Dwight because, Dwight needs a job. He's sort of hamstrung. So, all right, enough on AD. Let's turn our attention to Russ. Russ. Oh, Russ. Russ. Okay, so listen, you all saw it. We all saw it. The man there's a football corollary. I've nicknamed one of the Rams special teamers who wants to be a wide receiver Hands of Stone. This is a little Hands of Stoney. Okay? He led the league in turnovers all the way up until the end of the season, and then he didn't play the last 3 games. And so in those last 3 games, I believe it was little Trey edged him out for the lead in turnovers. But to be that high up on the turnover charts is a problem for your primary ball handler and point guard. Russ is a poor shooter. There's just no other way to put it now. Okay? And none of this is personal. These aren't personal attacks. I'm just looking at it objectively. The man doesn't shoot worth a damn. Every now and then, a shot will go in and you'll almost be like, whoa, I'm shocked he made that. But for the most part, I've seen Russ, just in this season, this one lone Lakers season, I've seen Russ shoot more balls off the side of the backboard, the top of the board, the shot clock than I've ever seen in all my years of watching the NBA. It's clown show-esque, to be sure. Russ is surly. He seems to be a very obstinate type of individual. And Russ is due $47.1 million for his services next year. Player option. Wow. So, I don't know how the Lakers make that situation work. I don't know what team would pick that up. They say that because it's an expiring contract that it could be seen as attractive to someone. It seems plausible to me that the Lakers could be stuck with Russ another year. My understanding is that it's mutually agreed upon that they want to part ways. So hopefully there's a way to make that happen. But it was an epic fail. And Russ was a major part of that. And Russ, unlike LeBron or AD, does not have a championship ring. And I don't know how, with the current dynamic, he would ever get one unless he accepted a different role, a diminished role, coming off the bench as a role player, part of a team that was already rolling. I could see him getting one that way. But in his mind, being the main guy, the leader, the point guard, the ball handler, controlling the pace, Russ. He wears a 0 on his jersey, and that's what the prognosis is for rings for Russ. 0. Unless he somehow has an epiphany and changes his way. Leading the league most of the year in turnovers, as I mentioned. His shot selection, his attitude on the court. He gets upset with people who celebrate, but yet he rocks the baby the rare occasion that he does hit a shot. He led the league in missed dunks, I understand. Can't even finish on your dunks. His athleticism is waning as he gets older. And he didn't have the skills to compensate for that. And so you see him diminishing as a player before your eyes. And then with that surliness and the attitude, saying he had no expectations for the season, you didn't. That's why you got a 0 on your back, sir. So, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they move them. But it would be nice if they could. It would be nice to blow the whole thing up, just LeBron, and start over with a whole new scenario. I mean, I like Malik Monk. If you can keep him, Reeves has shown himself to be valuable. If you can keep him, Dwight is serviceable as a big man, but just in a role. But I mean, look at what the Lakers had as their other players, their supporting cast. Avery Bradley, the Warriors cut him. They picked him up off the scrap heap. He immediately became their starter. The Lakers. He became the Lakers starter when the Warriors cut him. You have Stanley Johnson coming later because they needed young legs. Earlier in the season, I did episodes, Where's Rondo? I thought Rondo provided something. They didn't want him. They Montrezled. Frankie V Montrezled him. So he was traded away for a ham sandwich. They kept saying Trevor Ariza's coming out. And I kept thinking, why do they keep trumpeting Trevor Ariza? Do you think once he returns, he's going to make a difference in the trajectory of the season? No. But they kept saying Trevor Ariza will be back soon. They kept talking about Nunn. I saw Nunn recently at one of the last games. He had a big ass chain. I guess it was diamonds. It said Nunn across it, hanging from his chest. And he's in street clothes. Nunn, glittering, flashing. Nunn. That's exactly how many games he played for the Lakers this season. Nunn, flashing. Bazemore gives you absolutely nothing. Okay? And so these guys, they brought in DJ Augustine, okay, and they tried to come up with a solution. They had all these different lineups. I'm sure the Lakers led the league in starting lineups all season. They never could find a lineup. Starts early on in the preseason. They went 0-6. It was an ominous feeling then, and he never tried. Frankie V now never played the big three together in the preseason, and I was like, what is that about? I was concerned about that then. And so, yeah, the misery is over now. Epic fail. But we need to go through the autopsy. We got to pick through the rubble. Okay? So you see the big three, epic fail. LeBron magnificent as, an individual accomplishment, a stellar season. But AD and Russ, fail and fail. The others, the supporting cast, fail. With a couple of exceptions. In the Lakers' last 10 games, LeBron played 2 of them. Both against New Orleans, the Pellies, and both of them pretty similar numbers. He put up 40 plus in both of them, 40 and 42. Both losses. The Lakers, I'm pretty sure they were the worst team after the All-Star break, because when I stopped covering them at the All-Star break, they still had a mathematical chance. People thought they'd make the play-in. But these guys came out after the All-Star break and only won 3 games up until the end. They were, 3-18? In the last two games now, with only the young rookies and different folks like that at the very end playing against the other teams, G Leaguers, the Lakers pulled two games out, but they just torpedoed. And even at the end, LBJ was passive aggressive. Remember, on April Fool's Day, April 1st, he sent out a tweet that said, "I'm not playing anymore, shutting it down for the season." Then April Fool's Night, he played. That was the last game he played. He put up 40 against the Pellies, and so it was a joke. But then he never played again, another game. And so that was the end. He did shut it down for the season. It's like, all the talk of, with the cigars and, the tequila, and I want to drink the wine, and it's a bad look from the king. Too much wine, too much tequila, too many cigars, too much losing. It tink, something wrong, stink. It's amazing. 2 years ago, the Lakers were the NBA champions, and the Rams missed the playoffs. 2 years later, the Rams are NFL champions, and the Lakers missed the playoffs. So what now for the Lakers? Well, we got to look at the coaching situation. Frankie V had to go, needed to go, should have been gone. They should have cut him loose before the All-Star break because they still had a chance, see? And with the change of voice at the top, they should have cut him loose and put J. Kidd in the spot. But they waited. And that's what I mean. They could have hired Ty Lue in the first place. They screwed that up. That's the problem. Who's running basketball operations? And Pelinka came out the other day. "I'm running basketball operations." Well, you need to have your job scrutinized. Somebody needs to look at who's your boss. Jeannie? See? This is where we're going to go into story time. Story time, ladies and gentlemen. Story time. The Lakers organization now is in disarray. And it's been so. And it traces back to the death of Dr. Buss. Now, less than a decade ago, but it seems like forever ago, in 2012, the Lakers, as an organization, as a franchise, was still riding pretty high. The last championship was just a couple years in the rearview mirror. And at 34 years old, Kobe was still balling like a madman. He was averaging 27, 6, and 6. And LA was surging into the playoffs. Now, on the surface, this is 2012 now, just a decade ago. On the surface, everything seemed fine. But just beneath the surface, just below, there was massive upheaval underway. Dr. Buss was gravely ill, cancer, kidney issues, and the NBA miles were piling up on Kobe's odometer. And the Lakers and Kobe eventually lost that year in the playoffs to the OKC Thunder, to KD and Russ and James Harden, who then went on to lose 4-1 to LeBron and the Heatles in the finals. But few knew that this actually marked the end of the Lakers' golden era. Winning time. Winning time. The phrase comes from Magic Johnson's reference to the fourth quarter, but it was also appropriate for the era that Dr. Jerry Buss presided over the Lakers. That became winning time. And I'll tie it into the series in a minute. But with that 2012 playoff exit to OKC, winning time effectively ended for the Lakers. The next season, 2012-13, would be a Lakers disaster. One of the last moves Dr. Buss made, and I wonder how much his health had to do with it. Maybe he would have made this move regardless. Maybe he always was fond of Steve Nash. But that move set the Lakers back greatly. It was an awful move for the Lakers. Costly. Steve Nash gave them absolutely nothing. But then in February of 2013, Dr. Buss succumbed to his illness and died. And in April of 2013, Kobe snapped his Achilles under the duress of D'Antoni's minute schedule. And with Dr. Buss gone and with Kobe out, the Lakers were eliminated, swept out of the first round of the playoffs, and tumbled into losing obscurity for the next several years. Kobe, of course, eventually would come back, but he was never quite the same, not able to lift a team to any great heights. And behind the scenes, the infighting, the internecine battles were raging. The power struggles, the heirs, and the doldrums set in, the losing set in, the bad decisions, one after the other, set in, the mismanagement, misdirection, and then the very well publicized brother-sister rift, Jim and Jeannie. Jim making no real inroads in terms of successful decisions, and Jeannie eventually taking over. Jeannie. How Jeannie is portrayed in Winning Time. And I let me just say here now that the series on HBO, Winning Time, I find it extremely entertaining. I look forward to watching each week, each episode. It's fascinating. And I understand that there are exaggerations and caricatures, and because it makes a lot of these people look very, very bad. The show makes Jerry West look terrible. The show makes Chick Hearn look terrible. The show makes Jeannie look like a doe-eyed, insecure, timid daughter of the boss. The show doesn't really make anybody look good. I mean, I will say the actor playing Magic, I think his name is Isaiah Quincy. Or is it Quincy? Isaiah? I'll tell you what, the guy is fantastic. He's got Magic down. The mannerisms, the voice, inflection, the smile, all of it. All of it. Extraordinary. But, Magic comes off maybe, along with, of course, Jerry Buss being the star, being his story comes off. These two come off the best. They are the primary characters, Dr. Buss and Magic. But even they don't come off unscathed. They make, Jerry Buss doesn't come off like a great character guy, really, and nor does Magic. But they get kid gloves compared to Jerry West and Chick Hearn and even, Pat Riley and a lot of these guys. And I've said it, my problem that I have with the series is that, like with so many other shows and music, the frequent and carefree use of the N-word, I do not like it. I don't appreciate it. But it's just, there's a Jewish slur, but you never hear it. K-I-K-E, kike. Have you heard that? You don't hear it on TV. Never once. I wonder why you never hear that on TV. Never. You can't say it, I don't think. Do you remember Michael Jackson had a song? It was a good song, too. They don't really care about us. He had a lyric in that song. Kick me, kite me, don't you black or white me. They said, oh, no, cut it out, take it out, change it. He said, no, I'm an artist and I don't have to change it. It's my lyric. And they said, take that shit out your lyric or else your album is going to be pulled off the shelves. How about that? Thriller. He changed it. He took it out and they edited it. You can't say that. But the N-word, it's in everything. All the movies, all the TV shows, the miniseries, all the music, it's fine. Say it all you like. Well, the people that it references, they like it. They use it all the time. And we like it too. We gave it to them. So, it's ubiquitous. And in every episode, the N-word is used. With the exception of episode 5, which I, coincidentally or not, believe was the best of the episodes so far. I think we're on episode 7. Episode 5 was by far the best to me. And that was also the only episode that they did not use the N-word. But I digress. My point is, who is making the decisions, the fundamental decisions? Is it LeBron? Is it the front office? Is it Jeannie? You always hear about the Rambi. Kurt and his wife, Linda Rambis. Now, I learned that Linda Rambis isn't just Kurt's wife. Apparently, Linda, before she became Rambis, Linda worked for Dr. Buss. Apparently, that's how Kurt met her. And Linda and Jeannie have always been tight. So it's not like, oh, it's just Kurt's wife and she got power. No. She's tight with Jeannie from way back in the day. From Girls. And Kurt happened to come along for the ride, I guess, since he married her. And so is it Linda and Kurt who are making all the decisions? Basketball operations, they say Pelinka was Kobe's agent. Now he's controlling all basketball operations of the Laker empire? Rob Pelinka? Really? Magic spilled the beans. Magic, he was on one of the shows, I think it was the Muppet Show. And he he said he delivered them, the Lakers, DeMar DeRozan, before this season started. DeMar DeRozan wanted to play for the Lakers, wanted to come home, let it be known to Magic. Magic let it be known to the organization, passed it over. LeBron was made aware. In fact, I understand that DeMar DeRozan had several meetings he had to take at LeBron's estate. LeBron met with him several times at his home. I guess that's how you interview him. Do I vibe with him? Do I want to play with him? I'm the king. I need to have him come by a few times and vibe with him. And see if he likes my type of, does he drink my tequila and wine and smoke? And maybe that's where the mistake was with Russ. Maybe they vibe with the tequila too much. These are basketball decisions, but they want to be homies. So Magic turned the scenario over to the Lakers, and they fumbled the bag and decided to go with Russ and trade away Kuzma and KCP. Let Caruso go. Let them all go for the Russ scenario. Magic explained it. I don't know if it's accurate, but the way Magic explained it, they could have kept Caruso and KCP, traded Kuzma for Buddy Hield, left Russ where he was, and had DeMar DeRozan. Oh, can you imagine that? LeBron, Rubber Band Man Robin, DeMar DeRozan, plus Buddy Hield. And then you also have Caruso and KCP. What could have been? Magic spilled the beans that the Lakers fumbled the bag. Bron. But see, even Magic was run out of the empire. Who ran him out? Pelinka? How Pelinka get so much power? From agent to, it's all very, very confusing. And it's like these interpersonal relationships and who knows who and who's with who. For example, Phil Jackson's still roaming around the Lakers organization. Why? Because he was getting with Jeannie. They're a thing, or they were a thing, or who knows? But they were engaged, right? And then they got called off. He's still around with Jeannie and the organization. Phil. This is not how to run. It's dysfunctional. And you're seeing dysfunctional outcomes from the front office. There needs to be someone who is a basketball person who is in charge of basketball operations. Not an agent. Not Linda Rambis. This last episode of Winning Time featured the Lakers-Celtics rivalry on display when LA visited the Garden, and they talked about the Boston-LA rivalry, and I definitely remember how racialized it was. Magic and Bird. And just as irony would have it, the very night this is airing on HBO, Kyrie Irving is flipping the bird off in Boston because of all of the vile stuff that's being hurled out at him. It's not a human zoo. This isn't Otabenga. But these people have so little respect. And so the things that are being said And just to tie it in, they keep, you know, it's been recently Jackie Robinson, the 75th anniversary, Jackie Robinson, and they keep making this about Jackie Robinson. And honestly, Jackie Robinson was not the best of the so-called Negro League players. There were far greater players in that league. Jackie Robinson is celebrated because he took all of the vitriol and the racism, and he just ignored it and just tried to focus, and his demeanor was such. But the story really isn't that the man was able to withstand all that hatred. The story really is that the league was a racist institution all those years, and it took up until that point for one individual to finally, of a different race, be allowed to perform. And then once the league became so-called desegregated, then you saw how many great players came into the league. Satchel Paige won Rookie of the Year at 42 years old because he was finally able to pitch. So will LBJ ever get another ring? I mean, at one time, it just almost seemed a given that he would surpass Kobe with 5. But now at 4, I don't know, will he even get to 5? Will he even reach Kobe? Will KD ever get another one? Maybe not. It seems like the guard is changing. It's a young man's league, and that's the mistake they made, thinking that they could run out there with the older folks, the elderly. It's a young man's game, and the kids have come, and they are balling. So the playoffs have been very entertaining, without the Lakers being nowhere near them, because they are buried 12 feet deep. And so this has been the Lakers Eulogy and Autopsy episode, the final. Tales from the Crypto, such an appropriate name, as the basketball has turned on the Lakers. Grow me one of these now. Come on. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. And until the next time, my folks, one love.